really was expecting no one to be here. I thought I would be speaking into bleachers and rooms. I've been doing talks on Zoom a lot. I love what you were talking about, that I'm a square on a Zoom meeting. And the nice thing about that is opened up to all kinds of possibilities. And especially as Lonnie and I are about to venture on the road, I'm seeing now that I can stay in contact with people all over the world, and especially in San Angelo. What I've been thinking about lately, especially during COVID, I love that you said it's the time of great pause. I too call it that. And right now there's a lot of unrest in our material world. We've all been kind of jarred out of our comfort zones. Am I the only one jarred out of being comfortable and being forced into new ways of thinking and being? Each day, it seems like, is a new day. I have to watch the news to see what the new rule is for the day. Talk about flexibility. I'm so glad I'm getting back into my yoga practice, because it teaches me that every day, even though it's uncomfortable, it gets better. And I'm willing to adjust to what comes up. I just did a eulogy for a doctor in San Angelo. This is not part of my script, so who knows what the message God's going to speak through me today is. But I had the opportunity to meet with this doctor before he died and offer his eulogy. And I asked him, what is your philosophy of life? And he said, I learned it from my aunt. And she said that whatever comes down the pike, accept it, embrace it, and then just go for it. And I think that's the message for today, is we are the ones we've been waiting for. Things are coming down the pike every day, and we are at choice to see how we're going to deal with each and every day as it comes anew. So during this time, with the confusion and the chaos, the only solace I get is through meditation and finding that inner peace. So when I'm in inner peace, then it doesn't really matter what's going on out here. I find that I can be content amidst the chaos. But I've really been thinking about the story of the Exodus. And I don't really think about this story very often. In fact, I don't think I've even given it a thought. But it kept coming to me over and over and over again. And I realized that, you know what, this is our story. This is our human story. Sacred texts are really sacred history. And they're living words and living documents, because we can take from those documents and get lessons so that we can learn our life. What I love about unity is the metaphysical principles through which we see Scripture. So we get to look beyond the physical, look beyond the history of the lesson, and we get to go deeper into the spiritual message. So what a great meditation too is to look beyond the physical, and let's go deeper into the spiritual. So what can we learn from this lesson? You all know the Exodus story, I'm assuming, that, the Israelites were imprisoned and they were in bondage in Egypt. And Moses, one of their own, he was his birth story. He's born, and then they're going to kill the firstborn. So his mother puts him in the water, and the Pharaoh, his wife, finds him and nurses him and all this. So he's one of the Egyptians, but he's truly an Israelite. So he's both and, right? So he's got a big play in this story of being freed from Egypt, of bondage. So I want to go over a metaphysical interpretation of this story. And it takes, you've got to kind of shift from what we know and really understand what's a little bit different. So the definitions I'm getting are from the metaphysical dictionary, and some, of course, I've embellished as my own, because we get to do that. We get to pray about it and think about it, and then we get to have our own understanding. I invite you to take what you like and leave the rest. So first, let's look at what Moses stands for metaphysically. Moses is the progressive drawing out. It is drawing from within to out. So it's that shift from the historical, from the inner, the worldly things, into a higher consciousness. It's that inner guide. Isn't it perfect that today's word is the guidance? I'm guided. Well, Moses is that. Moses symbolizes the extracting of the old into higher consciousness. His birth is symbolizing in the deeper, the seemingly negative circumstances comes new growth. So from something that really turned negative, it's really a sign of new growth. So he's a symbol of hope and pulling us forward, pulling us out. Egypt, of course, is the land of the oppressed. It's the land of being in bondage, the realm of substance, the world. Egypt signifies the darkness of ignorance, obscurity, flesh consciousness, and sense or material consciousness. So I don't know about you, but I've definitely been trapped in worldly consciousness. Mary, and I'll misquote her, she was talking about, tradition is just living.
Peer pressure from dead people.
Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. And I'm like, how true is that, right?
Very good.
So a lot of us are in Egypt. We're being pressurized by the traditions of old that no longer serve us well. And it comes to us in many different ways. The desert that we'll be talking about, this is the place of consciousness where there's a lack of substance or life. I don't know, during this pause, if y'all felt like there's a lack of something that we're lacking, but it's also a place to test our resolve and to humble ourselves to the will of God. It's a place to practice with discipline and obedience the universal principles that we're taught here. It's so easy to want to go backwards, isn't it? It's so easy to want to go back to the old normal. But is it really where we want to go? So the desert is that place of temptation, that place where we grapple from the new to the old, to the dying to the new life. Israel, the Israelites, are higher consciousness. That's the goal. We've got it both. We've got Egypt, which is down in our lower extremities, below the solar plexus, and Israel is higher consciousness. So this is an important thing to remember. We are all called to live from a place of higher consciousness. The promised land is the place where we are in complete alignment with the will of God. Our mind, body, and spirit are one. In this place, we are on the river that flows swiftly, that it has one destination. You might have a calm part of the river or the rapids, but it's all going in the same direction. The Philistines, which are really cool, not really, but they're really being ruled by the five senses. And they're opposed to all true spiritual discipline. There is no way that they're going to be open to this, the Philistines. So they worship strange gods in the form of animals. I think now we worship strange gods in the form of celebrity and money and what we have and big houses. I mean, we have all these crazy things that we worship, that we give our senses over to, right? So those are the definitions of the story. So let's kind of look at the story with these metaphysical ideas in hand. All right. So for me, we have been living in the land of Egypt, the land of the oppressed, in bondage of the material realm of substance. This, for me, COVID right now, I was thinking maybe it's the time in the desert, but I think it's the time of the plagues. You know, when Moses came, the Egyptians really didn't want to go with him. They wanted to hold back. And the pharaohs, you know, they didn't want to let go of the Israelites. They were holding firm. So things had to start happening to make them uncomfortable with the normal. Are y'all uncomfortable now with the new normal? I mean, we're getting hit time and time again. You've got the earth was screaming, let me breathe, and you have George Floyd, let me breathe, then you have COVID that's saying I'm sucking the life out of you. So we have all of these plagues hitting us time and time and time again, right? So I think this is the time of the plagues. And at the time of the plagues, the Egyptians the Israelites had to get really uncomfortable with the land of Egypt, the land of the material realm. It was too painful to stay there. So sometimes the pain of staying where we are is so great that we're willing to step into the unknown. And this is what we've been called to do. We are the ones that have to make the choice. We are the ones that can tolerate how much pain are you willing to go through before you take that step into the unknown, into that step of higher consciousness. So we're at that space. So that's why I love this talk. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We are at that threshold. We are there. We are at that Red Sea, which is really the Reed Sea. But we are at that. The Reed Sea actually means your solar plexus. It's that breaking point. We're going to either go through the solar plexus from the desires down here into the land of the heart, the kingdom of God, but we have to break through the Reed Sea. We have to think about the reed, all of the crap that keeps us stuck and not moving forward. But God gives us everything we need. He gives us the staff to cut the way, to cut the water, to give us a path to move through the Reed Sea. But we have to choose to do it. It's scary. It's scary to face your fear. It's scary to face the unknown. It's scary to let go and let God. But we are the ones that get to choose. Once we move through the Reed Sea, then the waters come and they wash out the old thoughts and the old beliefs. But they're still, they're dead until we get into the desert. And we're feeling good because God just liberated us, right? We're feeling good, all that's behind us, and then we get 3 days in and we're thirsty. And then the grumbling starts. Have y'all grumbled lately? Grumble, right? So then it's like, God, why did you bring us here? What's wrong with you? We could have stayed. I think it says, were there no burial spots in Egypt that you had to bring us out to the desert to die? Have y'all thought that? Did you bring us through this crisis into this crisis so we're just going to wither up and die? And so Moses, that inspired thought, they come up to a little bit of water, and it's bitter. We don't like this water. Y'all ever done that? I don't like this bread. I want Pepsi. I don't want that. Whatever. So anyway, the inspired thought is put a log in it. You know, just put that piece of wood in there and it will get all better. And it did. And they got thirsty. So there, once again, God shows them, I'm with you. I'm protecting you. And then their beliefs get greater, and all of a sudden, poof, in the desert is this oasis of 12 springs and 70 palm trees. They're in bliss, right? And then after a while, few days, we're hungry. Have you ever done that? Everything's going well, you get comfortable again, and then we gotta, I got water, I got shade, but I want more. So this is the journey through the desert, and they have to be tested, they have to grumble, and then God solves it. I mean, Moses, in fact, God's saying, Moses, why are you coming to me? You have everything you need. Just put a stick in it, right? Put the staff in the water, you know, I'm going to have manna. God is constantly referring back to Moses to say, why are you calling on me? You have everything you need within you to make this happen. You are empowered. You are the one that you're waiting for. Now, the interesting thing is, from point A to point B of where the Israelites were going was an 11-day journey. 11 days. But God led them through wandering for how long?
40 years.
40 years. Because in the desert, he knew if they went right into Philistine, that is the land of the five senses, where there is no desire for any kind of spiritual growth. So if they would have taken the 11 days, they would have just stayed stuck in their sense consciousness. So they had to wander it took them 40 years to practice the principles that were taught in unity. And in that 40-year period, what happened? Through all their trials and tribulations, they became one. One solid nation, one people. They became strong in their faith. It takes the journey. Jesus came and he said, you know, I know y'all been doing this, and it took 40 years, but you know, it really didn't have to take that long. But you get to choose. You get to choose if you're going to take the lessons you learn along the journey and apply them to your life and keep moving forward. Or you can take the lesson, experience it for a while, and say, I'm going to go try it again and see maybe if it doesn't work or if it does work. We keep going back and forth. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So Jesus gives us a lot of keys of how you can instantly, you can take the shorter route to awakening. You can use the Lord's Prayer as one of those lessons. To live one day at a time, to ask God just for what you need today. To forgive others the way that you forgive them. To judge not, lest you be judged. That prayer is so perfect to teach us to live and let go so that we can be in heaven as in earth as in heaven, so that we're all in alignment. So if you look beyond even that prayer, it gives you those simple steps to get through the desert quicker. Now, one thing through this long journey that the Israelites took is they learned a lot of lessons. And I pulled out 7 of those lessons that I think that we can learn that makes it easier for us to move forward into this new era, this new generation, this new life. And the first one is, God has a plan and the plan is good. But the way to the promised land takes work. It takes obedience, and it takes discipline. And sometimes it takes time. So we have to be patient. To arrive at the promised land is worth the journey. It's worth what we're going through to get to the other side. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2 is God will make a way where there doesn't seem to be a way. Every time they came up with a roadblock, there was a way. Through or around. Remember the song, it's too high, if it's too high, we'll go over it, or we'll go through it, or we'll go around it. But there's always a way. And God will give us that if we be still and listen. If we're obedient and we listen to the insights we get. Lesson number 3. God will lead us and leads us day and night. All throughout this journey of the Israelites through the desert. God sent a flame, a column that led the way. And then when the Egyptians were pursuing them, those old ideas were coming to get them, God, all those guides from leading forward came behind them, protecting them so that they could not turn back. So there was a veil back there so that they couldn't be harmed. So God is always leading us, always present, ever present. And God prepaves the way. It's always being prepaid for us. If things aren't happening for you right now, it's not time. Lesson 4. God in the universe fights on behalf of his people. God is always looking out for your best interest. For all people's best interest. Even if it doesn't look like it. God, the good, the omnipotent, is in control. It's only when we think that we're God, that we're in control, that we get crazy. Lesson number 5. God provides in miraculous ways. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. And God sent manna and quail every day. Every day. So it's there. Your daily bread will be provided. God is always providing. Oftentimes we forget this and we want to hurry through things. And we go round and round and round and we're spinning ourselves out of control. And it's because we don't trust. Number 6. Sin's desire and our separateness is the sin that keeps us off track. It keeps us running around in those circles. So the Lord said to Moses, I have seen these people, and they are stiff-necked people. You know, they're not very flexible. You know, they just want it my way or the highway. Have y'all ever thought that? Not God's way, my way or the highway. So even though we grumble, even though we complain, even though we keep going around and we don't learn the lessons, God is always there. God is persistent in his mercy, his forgiveness, and constantly set us free. He constantly, or she, whatever you want to call this life force energy, gives us a fresh purpose, hope, and places our feet solidly on the ground. And the last lesson, I'm sure there's 1,000 more there because it's a long story, but we may feel forgotten. Sometimes we feel alone. We feel isolated, especially now when we're separate from our friends and our families physically. And we have to remember that the Lord said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. The most difficult struggles offer us the greatest opportunity to rise to our higher potential and to teach us to be love, to be patient, to be compassion, and to be endurance. We are the ones who can make the change. It's an inside job. So stop the madness of trying to change others. You cannot radiate peace if you don't first possess it. In John 14:27, it states, "Peace I live with you, my peace I give you. Not as the world, as Egypt gives you, do I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid." God is ever present. God is leading your way. And however long it takes to get you from point A to point B, to get you from lower consciousness to Christ consciousness, you have an inner guide. You have Moses pulling you forward, guiding you. So just be still and know